Faceplant Prophecy.
Yes, my G's. So let's do a little deep dive into the Reese Puncher, which is one of my favourite presets that I've ever made for Faceplant. And it's one of the presets on my new pack, Prophecy, which is out now and on discount until Sunday night with your preset discount code Prophecy, all caps. And I wanted to break down, one of my favourite patches. But let me know in the comments if there's any others you heard on the demo that you want me to dive into and show you my thoughts behind the sound design process. So here is the Reese Puncher. Here's what it sounds like just with a beat. So I'm just using a drum break from the Ghost Syndicate sample packs. I think this one's from Infinity. If you want any cool drum samples, use my affiliate link down below and support the channel and grab yourself some fat samples from Ghost Syndicate. Anyway, let's break down the Reese Puncher, alright? So it's the best Reese I've ever made, I would say, and the focus was always on the low end power while getting that Reese character. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how I created the sound, right? So we start off with a sine wave, and basically the main movement is going to come from two saw waves which are detuned, and then I've only got one modulator down here, and that's just a randomizer, and I'm just going to be randomizing a lot of the parameters in the effects as we go along, you know. But anyway, you have a sine wave here. The volume is just a little higher than normal, up at 120%, and then there's a little bit of a fade in on the attack and a little bit of a longer release than usual. Okay, and next we add in the saw waves, which will create the Reese sound. Okay, so we have two saw waves detuned from each other. So these are all just the analog shapes here. The first saw wave at minus 11.69 and the second one at minus 12.29. So there's roughly like, what is that? Look, sort of 31 and then 27. So if you add that together, 50, 60 something. I'm not very good at maths. Was that 68? Something like that. 6.68 semi-cents of difference between them. And that is going to give you the detuning sound, you know? So they're obviously an octave higher from the sine wave. So the sine wave's doing the sub bass part, and then the saw waves are doing all the mid range, you know? And let's open up span as well, so you can see also what's going on while we're sound designing. So obviously the sub bass, you know, I've made sure that that's in the right range as well here. It's you know, in this nice octave range down here. In this pattern, I'm gliding up all over the keyboard because that's the fun part of having a Reese, you know. But the low part is down here where it should be, you know. And then the saw waves, as you can see, they fill out a lot of mid-range, all of the mid-range and all of the high end. But I don't like the timbre of the saw waves in the high end. It's too harsh, so we're going to be filtering all of this, okay? So we put on a filter down here. And just before I talk about the filter, you'll notice these positions, the pitch position here is controlled by this macro, right? So if you turn it up, it's going to increase the difference between the saw waves, so you'll get more of a detuned sound, and the wobble will be faster. But naturally, as you go up the keyboard, the saw waves, because they're a different pitch, they'll naturally be faster anyway. And so you have, obviously, gliding up the keyboard, you get the natural Reese increasing speed movement. But if you want just to control the movement separately as well, then you can also do it via the macro, you know? So anyway, the filter takes off the harshness of those saw waves, and basically the goal is then we're going to have to reintroduce high end later on somehow using plugins, you know? So basically we have the low end nice and powerful, And yeah, the cutoff on the low pass filter, it's a smooth low pass filter, and it's at around 3K. And it just opens and closes a little bit with my randomizer. So the randomizer, you just, you set the, where is it here? Random. You can set this, I've left the speed as it was, and I left all the settings how they were really. But I made it smoother actually. So when it's just on normal, you got these kind of square movements. But when you put the smooth up, it becomes more, like sine wave movements, or just, smoother movements. And then you can control the whole range here. So as you see here, I've tightened the range. So the whole randomizer is just a bit more subtle on everything that it's going to be tracked to. Yeah. So the randomizer, as you see here, then it's tracked to the cutoff a little bit. So the cutoff opens and closes a little bit. So you have a little bit of the saw waves being opened up and closed down in a random way, All right. So the next thing is also to add in some noise. So on a new group, I've got some noise inserted here, and it's just normal white noise. And the slope, basically, makes it sort of brighter, so you can, make it dark or bright. And I've got the stereo on 100. Often I'll put a filter in as well. On this one, I seem to not high pass it. I often high pass the noise like this, but I guess on this one I kind of forgot, or it wasn't important. But either way, the gain, I control the gain. It's a bit lower here than the first group is kind of on the default, I think, and the gain on the noise is a bit lower. But most importantly, the level is actually randomized. So it starts at 2% and it'll go up to about just under 5% on the randomization. So there's a bit of white noise movement. So it's quite subtle, but it'll sort of follow the filter movement again because the randomizer's controlling them both, But the important thing you need to know is that white noise is very essential to make your patches sound professional in the high end, So it's kind of something that you use on every single patch, or I use on almost every patch, If you forget to use white noise occasionally, then it's fine. But most of the time, if you put in a little bit of white noise, even if it's just a few percent, it's going to just make everything sound better, So white noise, and then that's the whole, oscillator section already. Obviously, it's going to sound much different with all the effects come back on, right? The other thing to note is I haven't used the global unison. And this is because I'm really trying to get the most powerful low end I can, And the global unison, more often than not, will stereo things too much. So I leave that off, and I introduce stereo in other ways using the effects, which don't disrupt the low end as much, okay? So we can start then with the distortion. This is in no particular order as well. I just go with the flow when I'm doing the sound design, okay? But here is the result of how this sound came around. So you've got the drive up at around 6 dB, the spread at 25, and they have slight bits of movement on the randomizer again. The drive does. There's a few other parameters being controlled by macros here, which I'll dive into at the end a bit more. This gets you quite a lot of the way there, because distorting a sine wave together with something else, sine wave with saw waves and with white noise, the distortion will sort of mush it all together and create a more powerful sound. That's the goal. So it's the key stage in sound design is distorting all of the oscillators together. So that's the first thing I've done on this patch. Occasionally I might filter beforehand or do something before, but on this one, straight into the distortion first. And you can see now, if I take the filter off, very, very different sound. The sort of all of the emphasis now with the filter on is much more in that sort of mid-range, and it makes the whole sound darker as well. But you got a real nice mid-range kind of power or emphasis. You know, it's more. It emphasizes the mid-range more when the high end is taken off here. All right, so that's the distortion. Then we have the convolver. This brings it into the stereo realm and also gives it some organic flavor as well. Gives it a nice room sound. Here I've used the white blur 50 milliseconds. I'll often check between the decays and the white blurs and the different sort of lengths and get different results. But this one was quite good for the Reese. The mix is only 20% mind, so you know, too much higher, it becomes just reverb, you know. So just a little bit of that. And again, it's on the randomizer a little bit here. So you'll just get a little bit more mono, a little bit more reverb in a very small controlled way. All right, so that already gives a lot of character having that convolution on. Then this is where it gets even more beastie in the stereo field. So great way to open up the sound using the stereo mode on the comb filter. It's one of Phase Plant's magic tricks, and it's much better than doing the global unison down here because you get to have much more bass power still inside the patch. So the polarity, you can try different, you know, settings, but often the plus is quite good already. The actual frequency amount is important as well. You've got to find a spot where it kind of opens up the sound but also feels like it's still cohesive, and you can move the frequency around a bit like I have here on the randomizer. So having a bit of movement in that comb filter makes the whole patch come to life more as well. But if you make sure you move it within a nice range where it sounds like it kind of fits with the, you know, the original signal, because it's mixed in here, you know. So you've got to mix that comb filtered signal in with your original and get it nice and tasty. All right. So that gives you like loads of extra stereo warmth by doing that, but you keep a lot of the low end power still. So a lot of these things I'm doing, you know, after the distortion, even the distortion has a bit of stereo push on here on the spread. But a lot of the things I'm doing is I'm adding stereo warmth and character through the plugins, but I'm always trying to retain the low end power while I'm doing it. Okay, so next. This is where we get a bit more high end sparkle again now. Just a little bit like the white noise. It's another form of noise, but it's the bandpass noise, and it's just a digital noise this time. Rectify, frequency, spread all the way up, bias up to 74%. So that's what it sounds like, you know. But it's just subtle at 3.5%. Also randomized as well, so it moves around a little bit, the mix. That would overtake it too much a bit, 17%. About 3%. You don't notice it so much, but it's there, and it adds a lot more high-end push to the whole Reese, you know? Then we've got a phase distortion. This is hit and miss for me, this plugin, but it seemed to work well on this Reese. Actually, really well. It's surprising because I usually have problems getting this plugin to work on most sounds. But that one really worked on the Reese. Yeah, that's this kind of magic that you've got in Phase Plant when you're stacking distortions between your plugin chains. Every time it's a level up, it's pushing it in a new direction. You know, every plugin I've added has taken it closer and closer to becoming bigger and better. You know, that no plugin is going, you know, in the wrong direction. It's always like maximizing, you know, adding a more maximal impact to the sound, if you know what I mean. It's always going up, 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 up in terms of either power, volume, width, warmth, character, all those good things, like every plugin has to count, you know? So this one worked great. It added more power, low end, cohesion, and warmth. It kind of gelled everything together. The tone has a bit of a movement on the randomizer here, and yeah, these are the things for the macros. But yeah, also with the phase distortion, the mix knob doesn't work very well. So when if you try and mix it in, you get actually this phasing sound, which you don't want, you know? So I have to always use the phase distortion at 100%. You just had this nice sweet spot here around 18%. Where you've got a lot of low-end warmth and power from the sound. If you go up too high, you get this character from it, which is cool, but you lose all of the low end, you know? So that's the problem with the phase distortion, is that you quickly lose the low end if you use it too much. So you're having the drive on a little bit, though. In that case, it was a sweet spot that actually gave me more power. So I'm always just finding the sweet spots that unlock more power, you know? Then we've got another distortion again. Again, it's a different one because it's actually a different mode to the first one. We had the overdrive to begin with, but now I've got the saturate. And again, it actually beefs up the sound even more. It almost feels like it actually brings out the high end more, but it does it in a way where it all kind of works together still, you know? And the low end power is kind of the same. So it's like you've sort of increased all the power in the mid-range and the higher mid-range and the high end without losing any of the low end either. So there's more of a lift in the higher part of the sound. Okay, it's just how it worked out really for that one, you know? So gave me a brighter edge and kept all the low end power. So then I've got a filter again, and this one is actually just to be used by the macro here. So it's kind of off at the moment, doesn't really do much. It's just cutting out, you know, a really high amount that you can't hear the difference. Okay, then we're shaping the sound a bit more to get the final finish. So you'll hear it quite subtly, shapes the sound, but in a positive way. So the cutoff is around 1.1K, and the randomizer brings it to the left a bit, around 18%. And it's essentially like a notch filter, but not all the way cutting down all the way to 0. So with this button over here, you can draw like an EQ bell almost, and so you can do like less extreme notch cuts. Notch cuts. Welcome to my Neurofunk faceplant shop. Notch cuts. You can buy your latest Neuroplant here. So anyway, there was a shop that was called Notch Cuts. That's what that joke is about, but I'm calling it Notch Cuts. Anyway, I digress. Then another non-linear filter. This one it's doing the same thing really, like it's notching out just a little bit, but in a different area. And then it's got this non-linear filter unique shape as well on the warm mode here. I just browsed through the different colors and settles on the warm. And then, you know, the Q and the drive you can use to dial in how much of that shape you want. So it's quite subtle. It still keeps the main Reese character. It doesn't change it too much. It just gives you a bit of extra shaping down here and a little bit of a harmonic interest here. So that's quite important. You know, it's sort of giving the whole treble a bit of a harmonic edge. And then the cutoff is it's working. Yeah, we're sort of around 800 to 600 hertz or something like that in that area to notch out some frequencies there. So both of these notch kind of filters, the Reese was too flat before, you know, and having them in, it gives it just enough shape that you get more emphasis in the low end, you know, because I'm notching out mid-range and, you know, treble, or like sort of high mid-range areas. This one's more like middle mid-range, and this one's sort of like high mid-range. Because I'm notching a bit out there, what does it do? It gives you more emphasis when you're hearing it in the low end, you know, so you hear the low end a bit clearer. So you're trying to, whatever you knock out, you're going to emphasize the other parts more. So you sort of emphasize the top end and the low end more by notching it out, you know. But, you know, go overboard and you'll lose too much of the sound. So it's just a subtle thing, you know. And then it's pretty much done after that. It's just a high shelf boost on everything. Just brings everything up together in the high end, like quite a lot, 3 or 4 dB, 3K and upwards. I do high shelf boosting loads on my sound design at the end. I feel like it's a great way to like finish up a preset by bringing up all the tops together, because the whole design is always you're trying to get that low end power and the mid-range character while you're building it, you know. And like at the high end, you can sort of just, you know, it's a bit easier almost sometimes to just kind of bring it up at the end if you need more. You know, you can just do that right at the end. It's not going to affect your mid-range and your low end, which you've been carefully sculpting, you know. Then we've got a bit of reverb, which just goes on like a macro. And then it's clipped at the end, so a little clipper and a tiny little boost into the clipper, just to make sure it's a good volume level for you guys. Yeah, by the way, thank you everyone who already grabbed a copy of Prophecy. I really appreciate you guys. I tried to do some shout outs, but yeah, it's been crazy the love for this preset pack so far, just in the first day. So big ups to all of you guys, and make sure you get your discount. Use the Prophecy discount code. Prophecy, all caps, get 20% off when you grab it, and thanks for supporting. But anyway, I've got to talk about the macros still here. So what I've done then for this one, I already showed you the detune, increasing the detuning effect if you want more. And then the damp is basically just to sort of low pass filter it. If you want it, you know, to build up slowly, you know, for your intros, or even just in certain sections of the track, you want to use the Reese, but just sort of low passed, you know. You know, you can just do that here. So it's just sort of affecting the cutoff on this low pass filter I put in over here, you know. What happens when you do that, when you really low pass a sound like that during the sound design, sometimes it will change the whole sort of volume and dynamics of everything. So that's why I've got another setting on the low end here on this EQ. So it brings the low end down, because once I low pass filter it, you know, it really started to emphasize the low end in the patch, and the low end almost started to rumble and distort. So I had to account for that by taking out some low end while the damping effect is on. So you lose a bit of low end, but because you have to, because the patch kind of gets too muddy otherwise, you know. Then you've got the space macro. So I do these. You'll find the space one on a lot of the patches in Prophecy, and this is basically where I combine all of the little stereo effects, like the comb filter, the reverb, everything that adds stereo, and you can just exaggerate it all together. So you hear the reverb a lot more, but you've also got extra spread on the distortions, and yeah, extra. Yeah, I've already said the comb filter, but yeah, the different spots in the sound design process where I've added width, they all get exaggerated when you use the space, you know. So yeah, good way to give you you know, wash the sound out more for the end of a section or in the intro, you know. You can bring it. You can use it to basically push it further back or bring it closer. That's the real goal. It's the depth change on it. So you can use the space to give it more depth, push it further backwards, and also the damp will give it a sense that it's further back in the mix because you've got less high end, so it feels further away. So you basically use those to like make the Reese further away or bring it closer when it's dry and not damp. Then it's closer to you again. Nice and close and up in your face, and then right at the back of the room. Yeah, so just great way to control the position of it, three-dimensionally in terms of, how close or how far, not how wide or how narrow, And then the bite is wonderful as well. That's just quite a subtle one, but it's just going to give you mix down control. So if you're mixing your Reese into your track, you're going to have you're going to have your hi-hats going on. You're going to have other stuff in the high end, So think of this as like high-end control. So you can bring it down a bit if it's too much and clashing with other stuff. Or if you want to go full out, slam it against the wall, go full on with the brightness. That's as if you get it really dry and bright. That's as powerful and as close to the front of the room as you can have it then, But yeah, think of the bite as like a extra level of high end control where you can push it a bit more or tone it down a bit in the highs, It just sort of controls like the distortion drives and a little bit of the white noise mix as well. So it's a little combination of things to give it like a bit of extra sparkle or less high end kind of push, So yeah, that's it basically. That's the Reese Puncher. So it's really, really nice. And yeah, a lot of the reason why it's so good is because it's got such great power and stereo to it. It's got a perfect balance of low end power and stereo width and like warmth and character, in my opinion at least. So yeah, that's the Reese Puncher. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Alright guys, so thanks a lot for watching. Yeah, make sure you use your discount code and grab the Prophecy pack if you want to support. And you'll find all the other links down below as well. All my preset packs are listed on my links down below, so you can just access them all via my website. You can also check out the affiliate links for my recommended drum sample packs. You can check out my Patreon, Discord community, my mastering services you can access via emailing me, and you can also hit me up for one-on-one lessons or book in directly on my lesson calendar book linked down below as well. So anyway, thanks very much guys. Have a great rest of your evening. Big ups once again for everyone who supported and grabbed the newest phase plant pack, Prophecy, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Yeah, much love.
Out now.